Last year, your neighbor worked exactly 2,080 hours. They dealt with a demanding boss, sat through 300 pointless Zoom calls, and navigated the soul-crushing reality of a daily commute just to earn the median US salary. Meanwhile, if you had $750,000 sitting in a boring S&P 500 index fund, your portfolio likely grew by about $67,500. You didn't work a single hour for it. You didn't even have to put on pants. Most financial advice focuses on the first 100K, or the magic million, but there is a silent structural shift that happens right at $750,000, a number that almost no one talks about. It is the moment the game of wealth building fundamentally breaks. It's the point where your contributions stop being the engine and start being the spare tire. It's the threshold where every minor mistake you make is suddenly amplified by 10, and your role shifts from an active builder to a strategic steward. If you're approaching this number, or you've recently crossed it, you've likely noticed your portfolio is behaving strangely. The swings are bigger, the stakes are higher, and the old advice doesn't seem to fit anymore. Today, we're going to look at the cold hard math of why 750K rewires your reality, the psychological trap of the 100K paper loss, and the strategic moves you must make right now to ensure this threshold leads to a multi-million-dollar finish line. You've built the engine. Now, let's learn how to drive it. When compounding becomes dominant. Why 750K? Why not 500K or 1 million? It comes down to a concept we call the contribution crossover. In the beginning, your savings rate is everything. If you have $50,000 and you save $15,000, your savings account is doing 80% of the work. You are the hero. But as you climb towards $750,000, the gravity of the money takes over. At a standard 9% average annual return, $750,000 generates roughly $67,500 a year. Think about that number. That is more than the median household income in the United States. Your portfolio has officially become a high earner. If you're still diligently contributing $20,000 a year, that contribution now only represents about 2.6% of your total portfolio value. In the early days, your 20K was a massive boost. Now it's just a rounding error compared to a good week in the market. Let's look at the zero hustle timeline. If you hit 750K and literally never add another dollar to your brokerage account again, here is what happens at a 9% return. Year 0, $750,000. Year 3, $971,000. You're essentially a millionaire in 36 months just by breathing. Year 5, $1.15 million. Year 10, $1.78 million. Year 20, $4.2 million. This is the strange behavior of the 750K threshold. The journey from $0 to 750K likely took you 15 to 20 years of intense sacrifice. But the journey from 750K to over $4 million happens in the same amount of time, even if you stop working. The curve has gone from a gentle slope to a vertical wall. Investor A versus Investor B. To really understand the power of this threshold, we need to compare two different investors. I call this the gravity gap. Investor A has $750,000. They're tired. They decide to stop contributing entirely and just let the money sit in a total market fund. Investor B has $300,000. They are incredibly disciplined, high-intensity savers who are shoveling $25,000 a year into the market. Both get a 9% return. After 10 years, who wins? Investor B, despite their massive $25K a year effort, ends up with roughly $1.1 million. Investor A, who contributed $0, ends up with $1.78 million. Investor A wins by over $600,000 without lifting a finger. This is a bitter pill to swallow for those in the accumulation phase, but it's a vital lesson for those at the 750K mark. Your primary job is no longer to work for money. It's to keep the money working for you. At this stage, your discipline isn't measured by how much you save, but by how well you can resist the urge to tinker with the engine. From builder to steward. If the math is so easy, why does this stage feel so hard? Because 750K rewires your brain in a way that can lead to total self-sabotage. If you spend any time in communities like r/financial independence or r/bogleheads, you'll see a recurring theme: the paper loss pain. When you had 100K, a 15% market correction was a $15,000 drop. It stung, but you could work your way out of it in a few months. At 750K, a 15% correction, which happens roughly once every few years, is a $112,500 loss. Seeing a six-figure loss on your screen in a single month is psychologically devastating. The builder in you wants to do something. You want to hedge. You want to move to cash. You want to optimize. But the most dangerous move at this scale is movement itself. You have transitioned from the builder phase, where hustle wins, to the steward phase, where patience wins. A steward's job is to protect the compounding engine from its greatest threat: you. At 750K, your identity has to shift. You aren't saving anymore. You are managing a living, breathing entity that is capable of sustaining your entire life. This is where the boring middle becomes the anxious middle. You have enough to lose, but not enough to feel bulletproof yet. The smartest thing you can do at this stage? Simplify. Complexity is the enemy of the 750K portfolio. The more moving parts you have, the more chances you have to panic sell or over leverage during a dip. This is why you see so many veterans in the r/chubby fire threads advocating for the simplest 3-fund portfolios. They've learned that at this scale, doing less is the highest paid skill you can have. Amplified consequences. At this scale, the small numbers start to have massive multi-generational consequences. Let's talk about the 3 hidden costs that can quietly bleed a 750K portfolio dry. 1. The kitchen remodel trap. Let's say you want a $75,000 home renovation. At 750K, you might think, I can afford it, it's only 10% of my net worth. But you aren't just spending 75K. You are removing 75K from the most powerful compounding phase of its life. Over 20 years at 9%, that 75K would have become $420,000. That kitchen didn't cost you 75K. It cost you $500,000 of future freedom. At this threshold, you have to start viewing every withdrawal through the lens of opportunity cost. 2. The fee creep. When you have $50,000, a 1% management fee is $500. Whatever. At $750,000, a 1% fee is $7,500 a year. Over 20 years, factoring in lost growth, that small fee will cost you over $450,000. If you are still paying a percentage of assets advisor to put you in high-cost mutual funds, you are lighting a Ferrari on fire every decade. At 750K, you should be a hawk about your expense ratios. 3. The tax leakage. At 100K, tax efficiency is a hobby. At 750K, it's a career. Failing to use asset location, putting high-yield assets in tax-advantaged accounts and index funds in taxable accounts can cost you tens of thousands in tax drag. Your money is now big enough that the government is looking at it with a magnifying glass. You need to be looking back. Failing to harvest tax losses or ignore dividend efficiency at this level is like leaving the front door open during a blizzard. The Steward's Toolkit: 3 moves for the threshold. So, what should you actually do once you hit this milestone? How do you transition from a builder to a steward? You need to implement 3 specific upgrades. First, the umbrella policy. You now have a target on your back. You are officially the rich neighbor. If someone trips on your sidewalk, they aren't looking for a $500 settlement. They're looking for a piece of that 750K. A $1 million or $2 million umbrella liability policy is incredibly cheap, often less than $300 a year, and it is the shield that protects your compounding engine from legal catastrophe. Second, estate planning 1.0. This is no longer just about who gets your old record collection. 750K is enough money to cause a massive headache for your heirs if it's stuck in probate. You need a formal will, designated beneficiaries on every account, and, depending on your state, a basic revocable living trust. You've worked too hard to let the state take a cut because you were too lazy to fill out a few forms. Third, the Investment Policy Statement, IPS. This is a written contract you sign with yourself while you are calm. It states exactly what you will do when the market drops 20%. It says, I will not sell. I will rebalance. I will stay the course. When the 112K paper loss hits, your brain will scream at you to sell. The IPS is the emergency glass you break to remind yourself of the math we discussed today. $750,000 is a lonely milestone. You can't talk about it with your friends because you don't want to sound like you're bragging. You can't talk about it with your family because they'll start asking for loans. You're in this weird middle ground where you feel rich on paper, but normal in your daily life. But I want you to hear this. The hardest part of your wealth journey is officially behind you. The journey from $0 to $750K required hustle, sweat, and a decade of saying no to things you wanted. The journey from $750K to $2 million? That just requires you to stay out of the way. The math is doing the work now. Your portfolio is earning more than your neighbors. Your only job is to manage your emotions, keep your fees low, and let the math finish the job you started. If you're approaching $750K, or you've recently crossed it, I want to hear from you. What has been the hardest part so far? Was it the math of the first 100K, or the emotional swings of the big numbers? Drop a comment below. This community is one of the few places where we can actually talk about these thresholds honestly. And if you want to know exactly how to restructure your portfolio to retire in 5 years, you need to watch our next video on the 5-year retirement plan nobody believes works. You've built the engine. Now let it run.